despite the attacks that occurred overnight on the Al-Assad base in Iraq, the kind of retaliation by the Iranian forces was expected, and the fact that there are no casualties, or at least U.S. casualties in the base, mean that this is like Iran offering an off-ramp to Trump to tell him that, okay, we are retaliating, but this is, for us, it doesn't mean that we are going to escalate any further. So let's go back to the closed doors and discuss some way out of this crisis.
Can we go back to what happened just before the strike last week, Friday? A lot of U.S. media is saying that it was a deserved strike against Qasem Soleimani. He was a terrorist. He had it coming. He was planning things. He was planning to hurt more Americans. Does Western media, in your opinion, truly understand who Qasem Soleimani was?
Well, Qasem Soleimani has been active in the international scene since the late 70s, early 80s. His name started popping in the media radar, so to speak, since like the attacks that occurred against a U.S. embassy in Kuwait, and then also attacks on Iraqi embassies in Kuwait and Lebanon, and then the rise of Hezbollah. So Qasem Soleimani has been known for quite some time for those who are following the Middle East. Qasem Soleimani is no angel, let's be frank with each other. He lived by the sword and he died by the sword. So this is something to be expected in that kind of situations. However, of course, given that he has multiple hats, he is the equivalent of the head of the CIA, he is the equivalent of the head of the military special forces, and he is a special envoy of the Iranian state. These are three functions he was filling, so this is a major thing. Having him as a target is a major slap to the face of the Iranian regime. So of course there will be a retaliation, there will be a tit for tat, that's for sure. This is how this international business goes. However, there's still always room for diplomacy. I think both sides, for both sides, the honeymoon is over, obviously, with his death. However, there is now discussion over the custody, so to speak, of the children, and Iraq is the main protagonist in that regard.
U.S. President Donald Trump previously said he was looking at 52 sites that he could target to retaliate. We're not too sure if he's still going to look at those things, but Iran has promised that if the U.S. retaliates, it would hit U.S. allies in the region, including Israel. Does what is happening right now in the Middle East, as someone who lives in the region, make you nervous?
Actually, to be honest, it's deja vu. We have seen this before. We have seen this since the 80s. I've witnessed the Iraq-Iran war in the 80s. I've seen all the things that have been happening in the region since that period. And there are definitely a lot of things that are happening, a lot of tensions, a lot of tit-for-tat actions from different protagonists. I think what we are witnessing here is another cycle, maybe of getting to escalate before going to a de-escalation phase. The major thing at stake here is whether the US is willing to stay in the Middle East or is it going to withdraw? Because let's again be blunt here, the Obama policies were a disastrous thing for the United States presence in the Middle East, and now Trump doesn't want to really withdraw, but doesn't want really to commit. So the Iranians, and especially Qasem Soleimani, was testing the American willingness to stay in the Middle East by pushing further the envelope every day, every time, day in, day out. And he obviously got that response late because this is an election year, and Trump wants also to have some wins in this political game. So moving forward, I see that there will be another cycle probably of escalation, but it's not going to be against necessarily U.S. targets. My own guess and estimation would be that something is going to happen in the Gulf, and I think this is something that's going to make the Iranians very happy because they have their enemies there, especially Saudi Arabia and others. And They have done it before. They have managed to strike Saudi Arabia in its soft belly. They have, if you remember, the strikes against Aramco, which is a major thing in Saudi Arabia, happened, and there was no, absolutely zero consequence for the Iranians. Why shouldn't they do again the same thing? So this is a question I would ask, and I think this is where the real thing would happen, because they will strike two birds by one stone. At the same time, they will show to their own people in Iran and outside Iran that we are striking, we are retaliating. At the same time, they are striking not somewhere where it's going to hit them back hard, like the United States targets. They're going to do it against the Saudis or others who, at the same time are their eternal rivals in the region.
And of course, escalation is not what anyone wants. Iran's Information Minister Zari Jahromi says, he tweeted rather, "Get the hell out of our region." Is that a solution? If the US leaves, maybe the coalition leaves as well, we don't know. Would that leave the Middle East safer?
Well, I think there is a lot of rhetorics here. I don't think the United States will leave the Middle East, because leaving the Middle East means opening the doors to China and other contenders. This is not something that the United States is really looking forward to having as a situation. I think the Iranians are pushing the envelope. They are trying to gain more leverage in this kind of negotiations. Let's not forget that at the end, war and conflict and violent conflict is just the continuation of politics by other means. This is what the strategy, like the master of strategy, Clausewitz, said like back three centuries ago. He said, war is the continuation of politics via other means. And this is what the Iranians are trying. They are trying to push in the envelope, having more say. They want to build this, this kind of aura in the region, and having all these countries under their yoke. However, the United States doesn't see it this way. So it's going to be a little bit of back and forth before they reach a real compromise.